So it is a real special honor for me to sit down with you today, Nikole. We know how important your work is for adults and how important your work is for kids who are trying to understand our history, even their own family story. So thank you so much for joining us. This is our first Storytime meeting of the Freedom Readers Book Club. So we're so thrilled you could join us.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here. And, I'm always honored to be in conversation with you, Dr. Crenshaw. And it is so beautiful to have witnessed everyone collectively reading the book. I haven't had that experience before, and to see all of your little faces on here. So I hope you enjoyed the book. I wrote this book for children, and I wrote it for my younger self.
Well, that is exactly what we wanted to talk to you about. I was really struck, Nikole, in the last section. You have a quote where you say, "We especially hope Black American children who may be longing to feel connected to their roots come away empowered by the knowledge that there is not shame in descending from American slavery, and with the understanding that they came from a resilient people who loved, resisted, and persevered." So that quote really, really moved us. It shows how embracing our history, how important it is for us to have access to it as kids. We know that research shows that having this history is an important part of growing into proud and empowered adults. So it is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this with the kids. And while we're talking, we've got an activity for the kids in the room that they're doing right now based on those powerful sentences. We've asked them to draw some self-portraits. We want them to be able to see and represent to us who they are, the things that they love about themselves and their families. And so we can't wait to see those self-portraits that all the little ones are coming up with. So you all keep working on those during our next section while I have a little chat. So that magic is going on in the background. I have so much to ask you about the book, but before we get into the context, can you tell us, because you sort of hinted at it, and I know our parents and kids want to hear more about what prompted you to write this book. In a way, this is the origin story about this origin story.
Yes, absolutely. So kind of two different things really prompted this book. One, when the original 1619 Project came out in 2019 as a special project of the New York Times magazine, I was going all across the country talking about it, and I kept hearing from parents who said, we need our children to be introduced to this before they are old enough to read this magazine, that they didn't want to wait until they were teenagers or adults before they could introduce them to these themes. So many parents and educators were really asking for a children's version of the book. And then, as I said, I just have thought so much through the years, but particularly working on this project, how I just wish I had something like this. That story that I opened the book with is my story. I was the Black child, which is a common thing. It's a common assignment that our children get in schools as teachers are trying to talk about the great melting pot of America, and they want students to do assignments about their ancestral land or their native land or wherever their family immigrated from. And Black American children, of course, can't do that assignment. We don't know. And slavery erased that. And so it was a period of shame for me as a child that I didn't have that story. And then all these years later, here I have my child in New York City public schools, and she gets that same assignment. So this was a way for me to give Black American children who descend from American slavery their own origin story, and to say we don't need to feel shame that history was erased, that we formed a people here, but also that we do have a history there, and that the story of Black people in this country does not start with our enslavement, that we had people and culture and love and life before we were brought here, but that there's also nothing shameful about our history of enslavement. And in fact, we always maintained our full humanity, both through our resistance, our love, but how we built this country. So that was really why I wanted to write this book.
So beautiful. And I know many people on my team are nodding their heads because we were speculating. Do we think the origin story was when Nikole was a kid? Or do we think the origin story was when she was raising her kids? Obviously, it's both of these things, both of these things. And I'm sure, parents and other children who are listening also identified with that moment of having that assignment and realizing that at best we might know 3 generations, 4 if we're lucky. I myself just 6 months ago was visiting my great aunt in South Carolina and found out about my great grandmother who was enslaved and had 19 children and only knew where 3 of them were. And so I'm luckily descended from one of the 3 children that she knew. And it was just I don't know, it was hard to explain what it meant to be able to put a name to the sort of the emptiness of our story. And it just meant so much to me. And it raises for me then just such a maddening contradiction about what's going on now. So as we both know, there's been incredible backlash to 1619, both the journalistic project, but also to Born on the Water. There's backlash to critical race theory. There's backlash to Ruby Bridges. And a lot of that backlash is framed as this is divisive. It does damage to our children. So there's all this conversation about damage, but not much conversation about the damage from the absence of these stories.
That's right.
And so what's so great about your book is it starts with the consequences of that erasure. And I wonder if you had, more thoughts about, the consequence of the absence and why there's a moral panic about what happens when we start to fill that absence and no moral panic about the absence of these stories.
Yes. So, of course, when we look at the language and the impetus of these laws are not about protecting Black and brown children. We know that, right? They're not directed towards us because the normative experience for our children is to feel, right? All of those things they say they don't want people to feel. They don't want children to feel, which is worried that they'll have angst or they'll be upset or they'll, all of those. Our children feel that all the time, but they feel it because they're either completely erased from the story. They don't see themselves at all, which leads us to think, as I did as a child, that the reason we didn't learn much about Black people was, I guess, Black people didn't do much that we should learn about. That is how a Black child often feels, because you believe that your teachers teach you what's important. So if they haven't taught it to you, it must not be important. If you're not in the textbook, it must be because there weren't things for them to put about you in the textbook. And so these laws have never been concerned about what is the very typical experience for Black and brown children and children of any marginalized group. And what we also know, though, as you know, Dr. Crenshaw, the research is clear that when Black children get exposed to Black history, they actually do better academically, which should not be surprising, right? If school affirms your existence, if school reflects your existence, then you become more engaged in school. So these laws were never, we all know this was part of a propaganda campaign. These laws were never really about what was being taught, but how do you use race as a wedge for political gain, except that they're having real consequences on what our children get access to. Children being told that their history or discussing their experience is divisive and illegal. Educators who are being penalized and sometimes even losing their jobs simply about trying to teach the truth. And so we have to ask what is so dangerous about the truth? Well, because the histories we've been taught justify all of the inequality and hierarchies that we see in society. And if our children learn a better history, they will probably grow up to make better policy choices.
Absolutely. And you know, the reality of, as you point out, is that it's not that there's too much of this information in the schools, is that there's too little.
That's
and
right.
when people respond by, you know, say, we don't even teach that, that's a problem. It's not a defense, right? It's not a defense at all. I'm wondering about what kind of guidance we might give some of our parents. We did a little survey before today, and all of our respondents to the survey talked about the need for more guidance and how to talk about this with their kids. And I was really struck in your book in the middle passage part, and I just want to say the language is so evocative, it's so moving, and the illustrations, I mean, we can feel being part of that community ripped away, just the level of detail about the things that our ancestors were not able to collect up and say goodbye to.
That's right.
And in that difficult section, you say the middle passage is no immigration story. Now, I know this is sometimes something parents have a hard time explaining. So why is it worth telling that part of the story? And importantly, why is it important to distinguish it from the typical immigration story? We all came on a boat. Well, not all, of course, but that gets told that way as a way of distancing from our story. So what guidance do you offer to parents about why it's important to tell it and perhaps how to go about it?
Yes. So thank you for that question. I was very insistent on that line because I do think so. As all writing is trying to do, you're trying to speak to people on different levels. And on the one hand, I want this book to be a book where every child, no matter his or her background, can begin to contemplate their own origin stories, right? And how did their families come here? And what were their hardships? And how did their families show resilience? But also to force children who are not Black and families who are not Black to grapple with the singularity of the Black experience, that we didn't all come here the same way. And that's why we have had very distinct experiences, and lumping us all together. You know, we hear that phrase all the time. We are a nation of immigrants. Well, that erases Indigenous people, and that erases, of course, the experience of 13% of the population who did not want to come here and did not choose to come here. And what I found was, and so there was a school in Harlem, one of the few very racially diverse public schools in Harlem, and they spent about 3 months working through Born on the Water. And I went, and Renee Watson, the co-author, and I got to go in and talk to 5th graders in this very diverse class. And this little Chinese American girl said to me, she said, you know, until I read this book, I didn't even understand that my Black classmates didn't want to come here, I didn't understand that they were made, that their ancestors had to come here when my ancestors wanted to come here. And this is a 5th grader. And so what we know is that children can have, they are ready, they are able to have these very complicated conversations. They see a world that doesn't really make sense to them. And they can deal with the complexity of these issues. And what it does is it builds empathy, because they are getting one narrative about their classmates. And this gives them a chance to have a greater and deeper understanding. I'm not an educational practitioner, but I am a parent, and I have spent, my daughter had her first book on slavery when she was 3 years old, because I was determined that this will always be a part of her consciousness about who she is. And I felt I had to shape her world before the world began to shape her world. So if you go, I put the link in the chat, 1619education.org. There are educators all over the country who are working in cohorts, and they are creating lesson plans, and you can see some of the work that they've had their children do and how they are instructing children in this very hard topic. And so it was really important to me to have that balance. We have to show the darkness of that middle passage, but we also have to show the resiliency of people and the fact that we survived it.
It's so beautiful. And I'm so glad you mentioned about how your own child was exposed at 3 years old. I know there's some people say 3, that's too early, but the literature tells us that children as young, if not younger than 3, begin to see and interpret racial differences, and importantly, what gets imparted through the distinction that they see being drawn between people. So that prophylactic measure that you talked about has to get there to do the work that needs to be done to disabuse our own children from the idea that there's something wrong with them. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I could talk to you forever, but I have to ask one more question. I'll preface it this way. When we were out and we were passing out the books, I was struck by, first of all, how many people just, they heard, oh, this is the book we're not supposed to read. So it's wonderful. It's a little bit like jujitsu, right? We've taken this negative energy and turned it into more of a demand for this information. And a lot of them were kids. And a lot of them actually were, not just Black kids. They were kids, across all races. And I would ask them, why do you want that book? What is it that you want? And they said, I want to understand. I want to know. I think that a lot of what we're hearing from those who want to protect the kids from this information is a projection of their own insecurity about it, because the kids want it and they absorb it and know how to use it. So I'm just projecting a little bit into the future. You speak about recapturing the history of a people who fought for this democracy, fought to create this democracy. Of course, we're in a moment where we're fighting for democracy tooth and nail. So I'm wondering, as you project forward, how will this generation be better equipped to fight for our democracy with a generation exposed to this history like that which you share in your book and others who are also trying to walk this path?
Oh, such a great question. I'm loving seeing these slides on here. And also, just before I forget, I just want to thank you so much for this effort and for this tour, because as we know, the opposition has been extremely well organized. So it requires this level of organization and giving people access to these books and to these conversations in order for us to be able to push back, because at their essence, these laws and these efforts are anti-democratic, right? A free society does not ban books. A free society, if you believe in the marketplace of ideas, if you don't like critical race theory, if you don't like the 1619 Project, you produce your own argument and you see whose argument ultimately wins in the marketplace. And so they ban these texts because they don't think they can make a better argument, because we actually have facts and history on our side. The theme of Born on the Water is, it's not just about what happened to our ancestors. It is about the agency that our ancestors exercised, even as they were having all of these hardships and brutality forced upon them. And what I really wanted to do, the theme of the book is democracy, right? That we went through all of these things, and yet we didn't just fight for our own freedom, but we fought for democracy for an entire country and for every marginalized group of people. And that's not the way we're ever taught to contemplate Black people, right? So even when we hear stories of, Harriet Tubman or Frederick Douglass, it's about what they did for their own people. And I really wanted to show what we've done for our country, what we've done for every person in the United States, and to do as I do in my adult essay, which is to say Black people have never been the problem in America. In fact, we have been the solutions, and how empowering that is for children of every race to think about Black people in that way. So I think, the fact that there was a little girl in Texas when they banned the 1619 Project and other books, who started her own book club, her own banned book club for students. And you see these examples all over the country where our children want to learn. They want to understand, they want their world to make sense. And because of the work that you're doing, which has certainly influenced all of my work, because of the work of so many other authors, our children are going to grow up more informed, more able to understand the challenges of our democracy, to see them with a clarity that many of us of our generation, we had to seek it on our own. We weren't getting it in this way. And I think that is, if our democracy is to be saved, it will be because of things like this. So just thank you so much for hosting this forum, and for all of the parents who brought their children tonight.
Thank you so much, Nikole. One of the taglines in the work that we do is that there's no daylight between saving our multiracial democracy and saving anti-racism. The two rise or fall together. I think we've seen that, in this last electoral cycle. We'll see it in the next one. Nikole, you're a national treasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your brilliance. Thank you for your gifts, and thank you for your courage. You make us proud, and you set a path for us all to follow. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good night.